bad.
Okay, so you are currently teaching communication arts at Joplin South Middle School.
Yes.
8th graders. Are they still a handful?
Oh yeah, that's a time of life when people are getting everything out of their system and have almost no inhibitions about doing it.
Now, you recently published your first novel, Small Town News.
Yes.
Based on true events from the Southwest Missouri area in Halloween 2001.
Yes. Yeah, there was on October 31st, 2001. At the time, I was teaching at Diamond Middle School, and the superintendent there disappeared, and the bank was robbed on the same day. They found the superintendent's body at the bottom of a pond near the town. About 11 days later, it turned out the two events were not connected, but the reaction of the media, of course, town Diamond, about 700 population, and the media comes in, and it was interesting to watch that, having been in the media for a long time before I went into teaching. And my 8th grade class had a discussion about all of these events. And what I kept hearing over and over again was, how could they treat the superintendent's wife that way? At the time, the superintendent was still missing, and there were all these questions that were being asked about him. And then after they found his body, it was the same thing. They wouldn't leave her alone, and that bothered the kids. And I started thinking about that, and I said that would be a good subject for a book. So the next summer, I sat down and wrote it. I didn't get it published for a few years, but worked on it from time to time since then, and I think it's still timely.
You just said the next summer you sat down and wrote it. There appears to be where most journalists, most writers just hit the wall. It's easy to say, harder to do. How did you do it? The discipline of writing.
A few years back, one of those Writer's Digest articles, I'd read some author, I don't remember who it was, that said, write 1,000 words a day. It says if they're terrible, you can go back, you can rework it, but get yourself writing 1,000 words a day. And at first, it was fairly easy because you had the ideas, you knew how you wanted to set it up. But then, like you said, you ran into the wall, and I just kept on doing it, having to get rid of a whole bunch of it. But then you get past it, and all of a sudden you're not wanting to stop at 1,000 words, you're wanting to go 2,000 or 3,000. And since it's summer and no school the next day, work till 3 or 4 in the morning, and it worked out pretty well. It all came together.
What about the difficulty in transitioning from real life events to a work of fiction? Did you find it difficult to create characters who didn't really exist in the first place?
Well, I thought I was going out and creating a whole bunch of people who didn't exist. The lead character, or one of the lead characters, is obviously based on me, since it's a teacher who used to be a reporter. But I kept thinking I was doing a pretty good job creating all these people, but since the book came out, I've had people from about 10 different communities say, you have to be writing about this guy who works at this TV station, or this person who works at this reporter, or at this newspaper. I've had one person who refuses to talk to me because he thinks he's a newspaper reporter in there who was not, we'll say, not treated very kindly.
Now, the great media parlor game. So in the newsrooms across the Ozarks, you can bet that it's even more of a debate of who's who.
Yeah, I guess so. I hadn't realized that. I hadn't intended it, but I sure don't mind it happening. And the fact is that when the guy who claimed the character was him started complaining about it, I looked back at that character and I said, well, I can see how he might think that was him, but I sure hadn't intended it. But I could also see how that could apply to several other people, because there are traits that a lot of reporters have in common. And I think you could take this book and take it to Spokane, Washington, or Albany, New York, or little towns around those areas, and you would find people who you could fit nicely into those slots.
And what are some of those traits besides gossips?
You have those. You have the people who are, of course, I live down in Joplin, and that is one of the smallest TV markets in the United States. You have the people there who are trying to score with a big story or two and then move on to Springfield and then maybe to Kansas City or Dallas or something like that, and maybe get to the networks or New York eventually.
They want to be the next Brian White.
Yeah, so you have those people. Yeah, exactly. You have those people who are trying to score the big story. You have the people who try to cut some corners to get somewhere. You have, in this case, the book has a sheriff who loves publicity. I don't know if you've ever run into anything
never seen any of those. Right?
Like that, but yeah, you see those kind of people. You see the people who are unsure of themselves in the newsroom, the people who have talent and are kind of overlooked because they're not flashy. Not all of it are, I mean, I try not to stereotype these people, but the simple fact is that's being human.
Does keeping a blog, and you update your blog several times a day, you're one of the most consistent bloggers across the Ozarks, does keeping a blog help you, or did the writing of the novel help you in terms of writing consistently on a daily basis?
Well, again, when I mentioned earlier about the kids kind of providing the spark for the novel, they also provided the spark for the blog, because I teach communication arts, which is essentially a writing class, and I told the kids, I said, if I'm going to make you write every day, and I do, then I will write every day too. I don't know if I did that for them or if I did that to kind of give myself a nudge, but I found it to be fairly easy to keep up with it. There's a day or two when nothing's going on and you have to force it to try to get something, but for the most part, this is an area where news is happening and a lot of news that's overlooked.
And you cover a lot of news that really can't be found in very many other places. Most especially interesting, you keep track of lobbyists.
Yes.
And what they're given lawmakers at the Missouri General Assembly. What have you found?
Well, what I initially found a few years back when I was at the Carthage Press, I recognized the name on a campaign finance report for a state representative, and I said, that guy's a lobbyist. And he wasn't listed as a lobbyist. He was listed as a government consultant. So I thought, well, let's see if there are any more of those on the list. And then I found a couple more. So I started, I just called up the lobbyist list for the state of Missouri, and I found 15 lobbyists, 2 lobbyist wives on this guy's list. None of them listed as a lobbyist. One of the lobbyists was listed as a housewife, which she may have been, but she did some lobbying work. Also. Sure. So after that, I began to realize that there may be a lot more to this than I thought, and I kept digging into it, and it kept up as a hobby after I got out of newspaper reporting, because I see it growing in this area, that what they see on the Missouri Ethics Commission website, where they talk about how much each senator and each representative is getting from the lobbyist, you publish that amount and people say, well, so what if he had a $100 dinner? But that's not all there is to it. These same people are also making campaign contributions. They're also making contributions to legislative district committees that have been set up. You have lobbyists who are acting as go-betweens and providing contributions from several of their clients. I pointed out one a couple of months ago who was providing all these contributions, and all of the groups that were contributing had the same address, his.
Just coincidentally.
Just coincidentally. And I was really happy. I can't say I'm happy to have a Jack Abramoff or something like that, but it finally woke people up to the fact that lobbyists are a serious problem.
Not just in D.C. either.
No.
Especially in Jeff City, it seems to have become pervasive.
It is really bad here, because you have, you take a look at Governor Blunt's campaign contribution list, and I can't recall the figures right offhand, but I think in 2004 he had more than 100 lobbyists who are registered with the state who donated to his campaign, often the maximum amount, and that's not including the lobbyist whose contributions were arranged for by his father.
Masked in some other way.
Yeah, because there were federal lobbyists all over the place also, and then you get the people who are connected to those lobbyists. Sometimes it's hard to find, but there are wives who all of a sudden are making contributions. In Joplin, we have the son of a lobbyist, a college student who was civic-minded enough to make the maximum $1,200 contribution to Governor Blunt's campaign. Now, the kid obviously has some money, but I know when I was in college, if I had money, the last thing I would have been thinking about doing with it was donating $1,200 to the governor's campaign.